Looks good. I do not see anyone online, so I have to keep track of that often, because last time we do have a problem when we go full screen mode and flip-flop on the website, and then it kicked me out of the full screen mode a couple times. However, the YouTube recording was good. I checked it, so you can just review the YouTube recording and you should not miss anything. So I'll make sure it works this time. Okay, I'll keep track of the full screen mode, and that's why I don't use full screen on the browser, so I can see the blue border representing the full screen mode this time. As I said earlier, we're going to cover the DOM event today, and then we'll go to the website to analyze what those mean and seeing some examples there. Okay, before we start, let's take a look on our calendar. This is the second last week of our semester. Okay, these things go fast because this is a 7.5 week class. So we only have 2 more lectures beyond this one. You do have a couple more assignments to go. I hope you have done I think most of you have done the assignment 4.1. You need to complete that because the last assignment 5.1 also used the same program. So you need to finish assignment 4.1, which we talked about last time. You also have another assignment to be due this weekend, which is the chessboard change to a checkerboard, which also rely on the previous assignment. I think is 2.1 or 2.2, either one of them. All of you completed that one, so you should be able to finish up this assignment the coming weekend. We will the same, spend some time at the end of the class to talk about that assignment and just to let you know what I expected on that particular one, and what kind of output you should provide to make sure you fulfill the requirement. But however, I do notice that assignment 5.1 is coming up soon, and the last assignment 5.2 is really just a report, so you could start it right now. So it's a 2-page report talking about what we learned here, so something you could do now. Okay, and don't wait until the last minute because the semester is ending next week. I'm going to move the assignment 5.1 to next Friday, give you a couple more days to finish, because nothing else can be submitted after April 28th. So I'm going to move that into the last day. Okay, since the 5.2 is just a report, so you can do that together, give you a couple more days to finish it. But I will not accept any assignment after April 28th because I have to submit the final grade after the weekend. So please do that as soon as possible. Particular 5.2 talk about 5.1 actually talk about images, which is next week's material, and that's why I move it out to next weekend, so you have a little bit more time to digest it and use it for your final program. Okay, that should do it. So please don't wait until the last minute. Read ahead. Okay, if you look at the module we have, next week we will cover chapter 4, 5, and 6. We already covered a little bit of chapter 6 last week, so we're finishing up chapter 6 along with 4 and 5. You look at the book, but before we do, oops, I talked too much and I forgot to go to full screen mode. So let's do that first before we go talk about that. Okay. Okay, let's start the full screen mode, and I have to keep track of making sure it's still working this time. Okay, almost there. Now you can see the blue border, so it looks correct. So let's go back and take a look on the YouTube recording first. And seems to be working fine. So we're good. And I don't think anyone joined, so it's still just by myself. As I said earlier, okay, so I have moved the assignment 5.1 due date from next Wednesday to next Friday. Okay, give you a couple days. And the final assignment 5.2 is just a report. So you can start, you should start right now. Okay. But however, the material for 5.1, some of them will be covered next week. That's why I move out the assignment due date to next Friday. Okay, that's it. This is the end of the semester. Last week, one more week to go. So please, if you have any other assignment that you did not submit previously, you need to submit them as soon as possible before next Friday. Okay. Let's take a look on the book, as I said. So we are finishing up chapter 6 and 8 for this particular module. And next week we'll cover chapter 4, 5, and 6, the remaining of chapter 6. Particularly chapter 4 talk about images. So you should read ahead before you work on the final project assignment for next week. So please read ahead how to handle images if you are not familiar with that. Okay, so please, particular chapter 4, look at the example they have on different way of handling images, and I think you need that on assignment 5.1. So that's it on the book. Now let's take a look on anything else. And of course, there are a couple discussion forum. Only one, I think. The other one is just the close-up on the discussion forum. So there's only one left. Okay. But however, there are a couple more for this Friday. But you should be able to chime in and provide your input on those easily. As long as you participate, in general, I will give you full score. As long as you do it on time. Okay, that's it for leading us into today's subject, which is the DOM event. Okay. And those are the topics that we're going to cover, as shown in the module. As I said earlier, there's no slides, so we have to go through a link to a website, okay, to go over those topics. Let's do that. That's the website. Before we do, make sure conferencing, everything is working. Looks like it is. And make sure YouTube is recording. Yes, it is. Let's go and start it. This is the website. Give you an introduction on DOM events. Okay. We said before, JavaScript, the purpose of it is interactive functions, okay, for the user. So events, as we said last time, is very important. So whatever happened on the page, you want to react to what the user select, or some effect that you want to present to the user. So those are the events we have to handle. And we have to deal with some events to click particular button and the click function. Okay, so we're going to look at more of those and how to handle them. Okay, so events like clicking, loading, dragging, change, resize, many different events we can capture and respond. But before we can do that, we have to be able to understand how the events works. So we can respond to the proper event, and knowing what event coming to your JavaScript function so that you can have program react to it using the event handler. And all those are done by front end. That's important, right? We don't want a server to deal with that. So everything is done by you through the JavaScript program. Okay. So first, listening to the DOM events. Okay. Now we already know, like in the button, when you click, automatic by default, when you do on click, it will come to your program. But you can also change that, add listener, okay, called add event listener to a particular element. Okay, by doing that. Element and call the function add event listener. And you need to give it the event name and then the callback function and then the use capture. We'll talk about the capture, what's that for. Okay, so basically the most important, you provide what kind of event you're looking for and what kind of callback function that you want to process. So event names, there are different ones, but most common ones are like clicking, mouse down, touch start, all this. Okay, and the callback function, as we said, is the JavaScript function to be called when the event happened on that particular element. Okay, it's element specific. And then the use capture, we'll talk about it later. Okay. So for example, in this case, okay, if you have an ID of element, and you can go through a DOM and then add a callback function to that. By doing this, you define a function. Of course, it's nothing more than just doing alert. And then that means when you click on that particular element, it will call this function, and then all it does is doing an alert. So let's look at the demo quickly. Good thing about this website is they provide very simple examples and give you the code, also a quick demo. Sometimes, you know, it is much easier to see the effect and then understanding what it does. So like this simple program, create a button that you can click, and when you click on it, it will call your callback function. Now you can see in here, there's no on click. You can do on click here, will have the same effect, but you can customize it by using a JavaScript to add on the listener, and then when you click on it, and it will call the function alert to prompt hello. Okay, so that works. Very good. Let's go back. Okay, so just by seeing this, you can see you can customize any elements by adding a event listener and process it for different purpose, a clicking or mouse down purpose. Now you also sometimes need to, or it's a good practice to remove the event listener. Okay, because if you don't, you can have different effects when we continue moving on to other function of your HTML file. So if you want something to be removed, there is a remove event listener function to do that. Do the same thing. You do the element that you want to remove the listener, and then you have that same syntax. However, just like when you add the event listener, you also have to provide the callback function name. Okay, you need to provide that, otherwise it will not work. You cannot just say I want to remove click on that element. Okay, you have to specifically saying which callback you're going to remove from that event listener. Okay. Now there is a problem. We'll talk about anonymous function. That means function without a name. It's an inline function. They don't have names. In general, a function you define this way will have a name that you can use to remove. But if you use anonymous function, you cannot do remove. So the good practice, the best practice, is not to use anonymous function when you do add event listener, unless you think you will not remove that listener for as long as your program runs. Otherwise, you have to have a named function before you can add and delete and remove the listener. Okay, so do not use anonymous function for that purpose if you want to remove it. Okay, like this case example here, we want that function call just like previously. You only want it to be done only once. That means after the callback once, and you will do a remove using the same function call. So you will not same program, except you will only do it once at the line of removing. So you click it once, so it's done. You click it again, it will not happen because there's no on click on the button, and the event listener was removed after it was called once. So it doesn't. In the previous example, you will click it multiple times. The alert will pop up every time you click. But here it won't, since the listener was removed afterward. But as we said, you have to have the name of the function in order to remove it. So you cannot use anonymous functions. Okay. So these examples are pretty simple and easy to follow. So please do that. And if you could, paste the program into your Eclipse and play with it too. Okay? That's how you add and remove event listener onto your particular elements that you want to manipulate. Okay? Next. There's a easy mistake on doing this sometimes. We have talked about this keyword means that particular elements or objects that you are working on. And if you just look at this program, you will think it will work, but it won't. The reason is you have defined a user with elements, first name, and then the function, and this is used within this context. So it works by itself. But when you add a listener using user.greeting, in that particular context, it won't. There's a reason. Okay, we don't have to show you. We know it's not working. Okay, because this is not defined. When you do that, this becomes this particular element within this context. When you use this function, it basically reference to this function called user.greeting. You find the function, and the function is defined here. It's one statement to do a alert. And when you put that into this context, the this does not mean the user anymore. The this representing the element. So instead using the user Wilson first name, it actually used the element and trying to find the first name, which doesn't exist. That's why it will not work this way. So it's a common mistake. So when you use this and use in a different context, be careful with it. Okay? If you just create a user and call greeting function, it will work. But when you put that function reference into a event handler, this keyword represent element instead of the user, so it will not work. That's the reason. Okay? So it's a common mistake, but of course you are not familiar. Some of you are, maybe, but some of you are not familiar with this keyword. But if you do use it, be careful. Okay? But if you don't, then it won't happen. But if you do, be careful with that. Now, let's talk about anonymous functions. Previously, we said when you do a add event listener, you have to have the name, and when you remove it, you must have the name, otherwise it will not work. So do not use anonymous function. What's anonymous function? Like this case, you add a event listener, you can just do a function and then use a greeting. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. In this case, you can fix that. The purpose of that particular section is to fix this problem. Okay? But anyway, it uses an anonymous function to fix the problem. Okay? So one way is to put that into the context. So you define the function here. Okay, using an anonymous function, and then it will represent the context within the user. So it's not a reference to it anymore. You define it, and then user greeting will use representing that particular user. So you will find the first name on the user. It will be displayed. The difference here is because user.greeting is not a reference anymore. It is a function defined here using that particular method within the user object. Previously, we used a reference only, and when you do that, that means you're taking the definition of the function, and then the context is on element when you use this. But when in this case, you're actually defining an anonymous function, and then the context within the anonymous function is the user. So greeting function method within the object works. Okay, that's the difference. So it will work. However, if you do that, as we said, this is an anonymous function without a name, without a function name. So that is a problem. That means you can do this correctly, but you will not be able to remove this listener because there's no name to use to reference to it. Okay, so that's called anonymous function, a function with no names. You define it inline and use it, and you cannot reference to it. Sometimes it's good because if you do not want anyone to use that function, you use anonymous function, then no one else can reference to it, so you can just run it when you need it, or only that particular instant that you want to run, so no one else can touch it. But in case of removed event listener, you cannot do that. So it's your choice. As I said, if you do not need it to be removed, then doing this anonymous function works well because no one else can remove it then. Okay. And the other way to fix that problem, the context issue, is to do a binding. Okay. There's a method called binding. .bind. All functions have it. If you do that, they basically is association, making sure associate with the correct context, okay, of the element that you want. So once you do that binding, then you can use the function because you already bind to that particular object, user. So you bind that particular method, okay, to the user object. So when you use it, it will not switch the content of a button. So that will work. Okay. So if you want to use it properly, you can do that. And of course, if you do that, then you can use the remove event listener because now you can actually just use that function to remove it. I mean the name of the method to remove it. But before you use it properly, you do a binding. So we'll bind to the user, and then you can find user.firstName when you make the function call. Okay, so that's the purpose of the binding. Okay, we'll bind to the user objects that you want. Okay, so that will solve the problem too. And this is a better way if you need to do a remove event listener. So it will work. Okay. That's what we can talk about on event listener. You can add and remove. Now, of course, there are many different things you can do, different events and different elements that you can choose to do the adding and removing, but all are the same. The same mechanism could be used. Okay, as we said, if you do not want to remove that listener, you can use anonymous function, but if you do want to remove it, you have to have a name of the function to be removed. Okay, that's it for that, adding events or removing event listeners. Now let's talk about event objects. Now we know how to deal with adding the listener and removing it, and try not to use anonymous function if you do not need to. And then we'll talk about different events. Okay, and DOM is object based, so you treat everything events as an object, and that object will be passed as the first argument to the listener. Why we want to do that? Because when the listener function is called, you need to know something about the event, right? So that it can capture some of the information for the event in order to process that particular function. So that's why the event object is always passed to the listener. Okay, so that's important. Okay. So there are, whatever in there is like the type of the event, that particular note that event happened, what is the current target of the event that it was fired on. Okay, they're a little bit different as where it's originated and then where it's currently fired on. Okay, and what is a bubble event? We'll talk about it later. Was the capture? Was a bubbling? Okay, and whether you want to prevent the default function or action to be, or stop the propagation, so it will not continue propagate. We'll talk about propagation of the event next section, I believe. Okay, so the different things you can do. Okay, information in the event object you can capture. Okay, long list, and really depends on what you need to do and to examine the type of information presented in the object event object. Okay, now we don't talk much detail on it because there are long list of information in there. It really depends on your application, what you need to know and what you need to capture. So it is up to you to experiment some of them. Okay. Before we go to event phases, let's check who else on. Oh, Shane is here. Good morning, Shane. Okay. So Shane, we are continuing on the event objects. Okay. And we are using an external website. There's no presentation slides shown here. We are using a full screen mode and going to a different website from the DOM events module. Go through the link, you can go to this website. We are down to event phase now. We just finished the event objects. Okay, and as I said earlier, previously, there are many things you could do, and then there is information within the event object that you can extract. Okay, telling you what type of events have occurred, so you can deal with it. Okay, but how does that work? event phases. Okay, when something happened, like this case, graphical way, when something within your document happens, someone say click. Okay, it will propagate from the highest level, the top window, to the document, and then to the HTML, the body, the table. Okay, just like the DOM tree, it go through, propagate down to your target element. That forward motion propagation is called the capture phase, phase 1, the capture phase. To capture which element the event is happening on. So that's the capture phase. At the end, when you find the element, try to execute it, that's the target phase, the second target phase. So once you find the particular element you want to work on, that's the target phase. Once it's done, it will propagate back. Okay? Propagate backward. And that's called the bubbling phase. Okay? So it's propagate back. So that's the definition of capture and bubbling. Okay? So propagate back. It's forward and backward. To have that, you can have different effects. Okay, that's the good thing about interactive mode. So you can have things happen during the capture phase, or you can have things happen during the bubbling phase. Okay, have different effects. Okay, but that's what it is. The forward motion to find your target, and then the target phase, and then propagate backward. Okay, that's the bubbling phase. Okay. So that's easy to remember. Now you know what that means. Okay, what's capture phase, what's bubbling phase. Okay, that's the propagation, okay, of the event. So take a look on it. On this program, looks complicated, but it's not quite. It's just showing you the capture phase and bubbling phase. Say if you click on this, then you will see it go from the beginning to the middle, to the event happening target, which is where I clicked, and then you go backward. Okay, see that? Okay, go all the way, find your target, and after it's done, it do the bubbling back to your original window. Okay, and each phase it use a callback to change the color, a highlight. Okay, that's what it does. Okay, now you know what's true is it will happen when the capture phase is on. So we only do that during the capture phase. But here you say capture phase false because you don't want to click it when do the event listener, then it will propagate again. So that's why you do the capture phase false. So when you click, you can go and see it going in, but it will not see it going in twice because you have the capture phase false. Okay, so take a look on the program and understanding what it does. Okay, simple program. Okay, well, so that's what it is. So during the capture phase, as we said before, you will do that. It propagates it down to the particular target. Okay. And you can also add a event listener to stop the propagation. That means it will not continue. It will not continue when you do that. Now this is an anonymous function, no names, so you can add a listener to say do not propagate. They will stop whenever you see a problem. Okay. So one thing you could do is to stop the propagation on a specific phase when you try to, for different reasons, like one of the examples they have here is, okay, not many usage, but when you want to prevent, you continue fire to stop the propagation when something happens, then you can capture that. Okay. So all you have to do is say use capture to be false. It will stop. undefined. So target phase. Usually that's what happens, that's what we want, because once it happens, find the target, because you want to find a target first, right? Otherwise, what's the purpose to have a event handler? You want to have the target. That's why we seldom do that during the capture phase, except some rare situation. But we want to do most of the thing on the target phase, the bubbling phase also, because you want the target to be identified first. Okay, so you know what you're dealing with, what kind of elements. Okay, like clicking on a button or in picture. Okay, once you have that, then on the bubbling phase you can stop it here if you wanted to. Okay, because something happened, it doesn't work, you don't want to propagate it back. Okay, so mostly things are handling in the bubbling phase. Okay. Another example here. Okay. Try to read them and understand what it's doing. So we'll find the capture, the events happening during the capture phase. One at a time. Then you reach the target. Okay, reaching the target phase. Then you bubble back. Okay, from the division to the body. Okay, so it says propagate forward and backward. Those are the phases. Okay, the capture phase, the target phase, and then the bubbling phase. Okay. And just like we talked earlier, we can stop the propagation, and you do the propagation stop propagation function to stop it if you need it to. Okay, depends on what you want to do with the listener. Okay. Let's see. So I think we have done that. Now, we probably do not use these functions in your assignment. It's something for you to learn, to understand. Okay, that's important, particularly if you have to read other people's code, so you know what they are doing. But I don't believe we have anything you need to do on event listener on your assignments. Okay, so there's something that you need to understand and learn. That's it. Okay. Last topic we want to cover is to prevent the browser default behavior. Now, we had it last time on a form. When you do a on submit, you remember we call a Java function, and then you will return false. Then the default action will not be taken. Okay, so that's a specific case for a form. And more common way of doing it, okay, is a function called prevent default. So you can add a add a event listener for a click event, and then you create here is an anonymous function to say never using the default action. Always do your own. Okay, whatever you want to implement here. Now, remember, this is an anonymous function. That means you cannot remove it once you do that, as long as your program is still running. So be careful with that. Okay, but if you do that, that means default action for that particular anchor will not be executed. It will always be done by your program, because you add that listener for the click events of that anchor. So whenever you click on the anchor, it will not switch to that link, hypertext link, and you have to do that within your JavaScript function. Okay, that's how you prevent, okay, to prevent things to happen by default. Okay, let's stop here first and look at the recording. It's still in full screen mode. Looks good this time. I'm more careful. Speaker and camera both are working, and the YouTube recording, we want to be sure that's important, because last couple times we have some issue with the recording. The YouTube is recording still. It's good. So we're good. Okay, that's what we want to cover today. Okay, so let's go back and look at this particular module. So we have talked about in different orders compared to this one, because the website is not organized the way it is listed here. So we have talked about how to add on listener to events, and how to remove them also, and how to use anonymous function, a function without a name, inline defined when you needed it. But if you do that, that means you cannot do a remove. You cannot do a remove listener, remove event listener. So just be careful. But if that's what you want, yes, you could do that. Like you don't want any default action to be done, then you can just do anonymous function to not run the default, and then so no one can change that within the program. Okay, because there's no name to remove to the listener. We also talk about how to stop the propagation. Depends on your usage. You can do stop propagation method on a particular event. Okay, and we talk about event phases, which include the capture phase, propagate from the window, the document, into the particular elements that the events happened on. And then once it finds it, it goes through the target phase to execute that, and then it propagate back, called bubbling phase, to the document, the top level. So that's the three phases of the event propagation. And you can stop it in the middle, just like we have shown you in the code previously, if that's what you need to do. We also have said how to prevent the default actions associated with the event. I think we have covered everything, topics that we have. There are some simple examples in the previous tutorial, so please go over them as needed, have a better understanding. Even though we do not have any assignment working on that particular topic, however, it is important for you to understand event and event listener, because as we said before, JavaScript is for interactive purpose, and event is the most important thing for us to handle for interaction. Okay, so you have to understand how it works. Try it out using the basic. Now we have done some, like the clicking the mouse, like the assignment this weekend, and basically you can use the mouse action in order to manipulate the checker pieces to move around on the checkboard. So those are a specific case for events. So you can use more, if you get different way to implement it as usual, and you can use the simplest way, or you can use this event handler case. Okay, so you can add listening event to those squares within your checkerboard. Okay, and if that's how you want it, and then have some specific effect on those checker when they got moved. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that after the break. But I think we have covered everything on the DOM event today. Okay. And Shane, I don't know you joined when I do that. Is I have changed the assignment due date 5.1 to next Friday. So give you folks a couple more days since that's the last week. And 5.2 is a report. Just write up unless you want some extra credit. Not 1,000 points, I think some mistake here. But anyway, but I think most of you are doing well. You really do not need the extra credit anyway. But that is a 2-page report. Okay, so you could start now anyway. So I moved the 5.1 assignment to end of next Friday. Give you folks a little bit more time, particularly involve the images, which is chapter 4 of the book, and the material is to be covered next week, early next week on Tuesday. So I moved the date out to next Friday for that due date. Okay, just since you may not have joined, so I want to make sure you know, Shane. Thanks. I think everything else is working. So let's stop it here and take a 5 minutes break. And then the last thing we'll cover is the, not too much. This particular, let me go back to that assignment first. As I said, this assignment built on the previous one on the chessboard. Instead of making it a chess game, we'll make it a simplified checker game. Basically move a piece of the checker. So we will talk about it when we come back from the break. Okay, that's what we're going to cover afterwards. And that should be it today, so it should not take too long. We may spend another 15 minutes to 20 minutes at the most, talk about that particular assignment. And some of you may not know today is the SIF fair day, so there are a lot of activity outside going on. So but since I already planned on this lecture, I just want to finish it, cover the material so you can finish your assignment for this week and next week. And then I'll go out and check on the SIF fair after this on site. If you're on site, that's good. Then please join us to the SIF fair, and then review this lecture afterward. Okay. So let's stop for 5 minutes. Thanks. Before we do, let's make sure the recording is still working. Yes. And we are good on full screen mode. Yes. Good. So we'll come back and talk about that particular assignment. Thank you. Okay, I'm back a little bit earlier because I want to finishing up this, and I can go out to the SIP fair also to support them. So we will finishing up earlier today than usual. I don't think we have too much material to cover anyway, so we should be okay. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, and particularly on the assignment that coming up the next few days. Okay, before we move on, let's double check. Full screen mode still good. YouTube recording still looks good. So we will just continue. Today, the full screen mode seems to be working. I think without the browser going full screen, it seems to work better. I think last time because I used the full screen browser, when we flip-flop to different pages, then it seems to kick me out of the full screen mode when we do that. Today I did not do it, so it seems to be working quite well. Very good. Okay, I think Shane is still there. Okay, let's continue and wrap up. So most important today is not to show you the program, just to show you what I expect, because there's something you need to work on yourself. Let's start up, go back to that particular assignment 4.2. Okay, so for this assignment, you have created an 8x8 chessboard last time in assignment 2.1 or 2.2. All of you have submitted it. You need to build on top of that and make it a simple checker game. So what we expect you to do is populate the board with the checker pieces. I'm not familiar with checker games. Okay, I know what it is, as I said last time. But all you have is two different color of checker pieces placed on the board, and you will allow the user to select a particular piece and move it to another position. So for our purpose, you can restrict them to use one square at a time. Okay, since I don't know the game enough, so I don't know what other restriction. So all I'm looking for is you are capable to put images, checker images, the pieces, onto your board, your table. And then by selecting individual pieces, you can select the target where it goes. So show me you can move them to find the target, okay? And then move to a different target. I don't really care whether that move is a valid move in checker game. That's not important. The important thing is you have to show me you can populate the board with checker pieces, and you can select some of them and move them to other position. That's all. If you can show me that, then you're okay. Whether it will fit into the checkerboard rules, and I am not and I will not take points out, okay, even if you don't. So I don't care much about that. Okay, of course, if you really wanted to, and you can put it into your profile. This is a simple game, right? And it can work well. Just like the bingo game in the book, you can implement a bingo game, complete bingo game, using the book example in the previous chapter, and you can put it in your portfolio. Same thing on this particular one, you can actually implement a true checker game using JavaScript. You have done most of it already after this assignment, and then put it in your portfolio, showing people that you can develop a simple game, okay, and a true game running on the internet for that purpose. I mean, at least on the browser, not from the server side. So you can make it a fully functional game. So after that, all you have to do is zip it up and give it to me. Okay? So let's go and start it. Let's start Eclipse. as usual, I already have a sample game created. Get some water first. Okay. So you are going to use, or you can create a new one if that's what you want. You are going to use the checkerboard, the chessboard, 8x8 chessboard you created last time. Okay, similar to the bingo board. Okay, and of course having the JavaScript function for that purpose. Now, I did not fully implement this program since it's not my task, it's your task. I only implement a quick way, a simple way. So when you start it, you display the checkerboard just like you did last time in the previous assignment. Okay, and you need to populate the board. I believe the normal game starts with 12 pieces. I just looked at some of the images on the internet. I didn't look at the checkerboard rule. But basically when you start, I think you have 12 pieces on 3 rows on one color. And then on the other side, you have the same thing on different color. I think, okay? Or even on the same color, I don't care. And you populate those at least 1 or 2 rows with the checker piece, different colors, okay, on the bottom and the top. That's it. That's the first step. A second step, I would say. First, you display the board. Second, you add on the pieces onto the board on both sides. I only did 1 row, but you should do at least 2 on each side. Put on different square. Okay. The next is the last step is to be able to allow the user to click to select a piece and then move it to a different square. You can restrict them to only move 1 square at a time. That's okay. Or if you allow them to move to multiple positions, that's okay too. Okay. So let's say that I click this. The different way to do it depends on what events you want to capture. We have talked about clicking events. We have talked about mouse up, down, mouse events. So it is your call to use which event or action in order to move the pieces. So it is your choice. The simplest way I think, is to select where it comes from. Say this one, and I'll choose the target. Then it will move that piece from the position you click on first, and then move it to the target position. Okay? Or you can just drag and drop onto a different position. And of course, once it's moved, the original piece should be removed from the original position and displayed on the target. Okay, now on a rule checker game, I think there's a problem, right? Because there's a piece on it, so which I don't care too much at this point because it's not really a true game. As long as you show me that you are capable of selecting the position of the pieces and move it to some other and change the image to the correct piece, then it's okay. Okay, so as I said, I don't care much about the rule as long as you show me, which when I test it, I'll bring up your board and select particular piece and try to move it to, since the requirement is only 1 position at a time, so I will just move it somewhere next to it in each direction and make sure it works, and then you're done. Okay, Whether it violates some of the checker rules, that's okay. I don't care much about that. But you have to show me, the last thing is to be able to select. I should be able to select a piece, okay, and move it to another position, and the image will change accordingly. Okay, that's the expectation. So it's not too complicated if you think about it. As I said, I don't mind if you use the simplest way to do it, which I did, because I just want to show you the effect. So you can use the simplest way to do it is do the mouse up or down events and capture that, and capture the original position and the target position, and then change the image on those two. Okay, like this. The simplest way will be clicking it and select the next position and then move it. Okay, I think that's the simplest and quickest way, and I don't mind if that's the way you do it, but it already showed me that you're capable to manipulate. Now, of course, you have to manipulate the information, the data in JavaScript. That's the purpose of the class, right? So you have to do that. Okay, when you propagate the image with the original checker pieces, you can do it in HTML. Okay, you don't have to do it in JavaScript, but when you move the pieces, you have to do it in JavaScript, of course, and display it properly on the particular square. Okay, so that is the expectation of this particular program. So nothing more than that. Okay, but if you are interested making it a true checker game, then you should be able to select different square and move them and check, making sure there's no conflict on the move based on the checker rules. Then you can make this game a true game, a checker game that you can incorporate into your portfolio so people can play with it, okay, when they visit your website, web pages. So that will be a simple but interesting game that they can do. Okay, not difficult. As I said, after this assignment, you have done most of it. All you have to do is make sure the movement comply to the checker board rules. That's all. Then you're done with that checkerboard game. So you can see, just by using simple HTML, creating the board, the table, and then using CSS to make this board look nice. You can even make it better. And the last thing is to be able to use the JavaScript to manipulate the pieces. And then that's it. You have an interactive game. And very simple. You can develop it within an hour once you learn enough, right? So simple games like that can be done quickly using our knowledge on JavaScript. Okay, so that's the assignment. Let's go back and look at the assignment again. Yep, that's it. Okay, you populate the board with the pieces, allow the user to move the pieces. Okay, you can restrict it one at a time. Okay, and if you like, make it a real game on the web page. It will be fun. Okay, I hope some of you will do that. Okay, it will be a challenge, and if you do, I probably will give you extra credit because you do put the time on it. So I think I will. Okay, let's say that. I promise you, if you do the full checker game, I'll look at the rules, how it play, and if you do make it a true checker game board, and then I will give you extra credit for this. Okay, of course I cannot give you more than 75 points on this assignment if you have done everything, but the extra credit will be add on to other projects that you do not have completed or you do not have full score on it. But if you do not you did not submit the assignment, I will not give you the extra credit on it. I have to add on to the assignment that you have submitted but did not get the full score. Then I'll add the extra credit onto those if you complete a real checker game. Okay? That's all I have to say about this game. So it is up to you to implement it. Make it the easiest way if you don't have much time, because this is really the end of the semester. So we really don't have much time left. Okay, look at the calendar again. So don't try too much, okay? You don't have time. Because you do have a couple more assignments to complete. So just find the simplest way if you don't have time, because I know you may be busy the next 2 weeks. So I think the quickest way is, as I said, using the mouse action to select where it comes from, where it go to, and that's all. And changing the image after that. So that should be the quickest way. Or do the drag drop if you are interested. Doing the drag drop, and that should do it too. Okay, I think you have learned enough here. Should be able to do that. But go ahead and read ahead on chapter 4 on images. Okay, chapter 4, how to work on images. Okay, because the next or the last assignment that you have, whoops, what happened to my, I thought I changed the calendar, somehow I moved back. 1 second, something is wrong. For some reason, it changed my assignment back to Wednesday. I thought I did that already. Yeah, I did that change. But somehow when I look at the calendar, yeah, I just changed it this morning. It changed it back to Wednesday. Let's look. Oh, maybe it was on the oh, maybe I do a back. I think that was the reason. I do it back, so somehow it has to cache information on the page, so it display the assignment back on the Wednesday. But when I now refresh it, then it go back to Friday. Okay, so it's good. I just don't want to move it again. Okay, that's it. So you do have quite a couple more assignment to do and discussion. So please go ahead and complete them. If you have, I think one person haven't completed this, so you need to complete that first for today, and a couple discussion and assignment for the weekend, and then a couple more for next week. But please go ahead and read chapter 4, understanding images, before you work on assignment 5.1. Okay, before you work on assignment 5.1. If you could read chapter 4 first to understand how to do images, and that will be easier for you. As I mentioned earlier, it is the last assignment is making use of the assignment 4.1 when you capture the user information, the username, weapons, point total, and the health damage score in order to start a game. You don't really have a game, but you just have to select, let the user select, okay, and then display the information on the screen as described here. So it's not too complicated, but I want you to read chapter 4 first before you work on this. It will make more sense. Okay, other than that, I think I have covered everything I need to for today. Let's go back, see whether Shane have anything. No, he didn't mention anything. So I think we are good. I'm going to close out this lecture today earlier, and then as I said, there's a SIF, we have a SIF fair outside, so I may have to just check on that.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Okay, with that said, that's all for today. Thanks for reviewing this, and I'm going to close out the lecture. Thanks for joining. Bye. Let's finish up this one. And end that lecture. Okay, good. Then I'll stop the YouTube recording, which seems to be still working.